Good evening. Welcome to the Racial Divide, Law and Justice in the Valley. I'm Mahoning Matters Editor Mark Sweetwood, and tonight we're discussing race in the Valley, and we really have put together an esteemed panel, and we thank all of you for taking time out and joining us tonight. But our panel includes, as you can see on screen with me right now, the Reverend Lewis Macklin. We've got Tiana Powell of Warren, we believe, is going to be joining us. Bryant Youngblood will be joining us. Sheriff Jerry Greene will be joining us. Mayor Jamael Tito Brown is here, and Judge Carla Baldwin. So it's really going to be an interesting discussion. And on the backside of this, we have the central office crew from Mahoning Matters. Shay and Julie and Jeremy are kind of keeping this thing going for us. And Jess Harden, whose name I almost forgot, and she'd never let me forget that, is actually joining us tonight too, and she'll be reporting on this live for tomorrow morning at mahoningmatters.com. If you have a question, there's a button at the bottom of the screen. Please hit it and ask a question. If you're watching us on Facebook, you can do that as well. Jeremy's job tonight is to forward those questions to me. We have actually asked for questions in advance and have a lot of interesting ones have come in so far. We'll try to get to as many of those as we can tonight. Tonight's community discussion, Mahoning Matters, ongoing commitment to bring local issues and discuss them. Whoa, just lost Reverend Macklin. Oh no. Discuss the issues that matter most in the Valley. There he is. And we also hope you'll consider a monthly contribution to mahoningmatters.com. We're a free open website, and we rely on our partners and our contributors. So if you have a moment, you can go to mahoningmatters.com and check that out. I've structured tonight's format into 4 segments. In the first segment, I thought it'd be really sort of important to lead off with somebody who I have just absolutely a lot of esteem for, and someone who I think is, when we discuss justice in the Valley, you're discussing kind of one of those lifelong residents who's intersects this at a lot of different angles, whether it's his work, and he has a column I should mention, Keeping the Faith, which runs every Sunday on mahoningmatters.com. I almost blew that. He's also the pastor of the Holy Trinity Missionary Baptist Church, and he's also a chaplain for the Youngstown Police Department. So I thought I would kind of start tonight by having a conversation with one of my favorite people, and it's Rev Macklin. Rev, how are you tonight?
I'm wonderful. I trust you're doing as well.
I am doing fine. When you and I talked a couple weeks ago, right after the, we started seeing the strife in the streets over the killing of George Floyd in police custody. You sort of you said something to me, and it really has been something I frankly have given you no credit for because I've repeated it often. And you told me a real conversation begins when we disarm people from defenses. As we get into this discussion of race and in our valley and our society, how do you start? How do you get into it, and how do you get to that point where you're sort of disarming people?
Well, today is one of those examples. It's the first initial steps. For some, it may be maybe their second step or experience, but having the conversations, being willing to surrender control and power, be willing to surrender preconceived ideas, and be open to understanding. That's the disarm. And if someone says something, don't take it personal. Don't assume that it applies to you and personalize it. So we become defensive because our response is automatically is to respond and protect ourselves. But if we start to take it from a position of trying to understand the perspective which the person who is speaking is sharing it, and understand, that don't mean you'll agree with it, but we also don't have to be disagreeable. And so we try to move that place of being entrenched in one position, and hopefully that we're willing not to necessarily be entrenched, but be open and aware that there are other paradigms, other perspectives, and how they influence that person who's sharing that information. And perhaps as you give not necessarily a rebuttal, but a response to help them to understand, it moves us a little further. But again, we can't be defensive. When we talk about something as sensitive as race matters, it is a very sensitive issue. And folks automatically want to go to the either it's not my fault. And I'm not racist, or you have to understand all the pain I've been through. And we just never move beyond that moment of right now. And it's really not about really me personally or you personally, but it's about us collectively as a people, how we can be better, how we can grow, how we can strengthen our community and our networks. And don't assume everybody's an enemy, and that you have some allies out there.
And in your job too, in your jobs, I should say, you have many roles in the city. What whether it's counseling someone through your church or counseling somebody through at the scene for the police department, what strikes you about maybe something that we need to understand about race and social justice in Youngstown? What is something that strikes you if you had to pick one thing? I know it's an unfair question, but if you had to pick on something that really strikes you in those dual roles that maybe even frustrates you a little bit, what would that be?
I would think that folks not to realize the pain is still pain. When I respond to a call or respond to a crisis, whether it's through ministry, through the church, or through the community, through my role as a chaplain, that pain exists. It's real. It's legitimate, and that it need not necessarily be ignored. And so I believe part of the common thread and common denominator of my calls have been to acknowledge the pain, to acknowledge the place where that person is hurting, and to help them to heal. And that doesn't mean to dismiss it. That don't mean to ignore it. It also don't mean necessarily just to simply give into it, but to help, again, lift up that process. And that process requires, again, sharing your roles, sharing experience. Sometimes it's listening, and sometimes also giving a gut check, a reality check to circumstances and situations, speaking truth to power in love, but also not retreating from that position that you believe is right and just. And I often refer to my context of faith, what does God require of us? Show mercy, walk humble, to be compassionate, be concerned, not just about me and mine, but about all those who are involved in our community. So our faith and our walk have to be consistent in our reach of trying to meet people where they're at, to get them ultimately where we want them to be.
That is a beautiful summation, because I think one of the things that if I had to say, what could I fix? I had a magic wand to fix something in society to move things forward a little bit. It might be empathy. Empathy doesn't mean you have to agree with people, doesn't mean you have to disagree with them. It means you have to spend some time understanding them. And I think that's sort of what seems, if I was looking at society in general, something that concerns me that we need more of. We just need some simple empathy.
I think sometimes we live in silos. And so because of that, we become insulated for what we believe is the world, because it's only our world, and not realizing there are other dynamics that are impacting and affecting the entire world around us until it's brought to our attention. And so, it's important to have the empathy, which means we have to have exposure. Again, that's that vulnerability. That's keeping yourself open to the realities. I've had numerous individuals in our community, both from the faith community and from just general community, just reached out and said, you know what, can we talk? And so can we talk means also making oneself available. And so I actually met with a colleague literally on my porch 7:30 yesterday morning because he's ready to leave on vacation, but it was important for him to have the conversation before he left. So and so that's important. So it's gonna be some shared sacrifice or shared inconvenience to make it happen. So question is, if we're really truly committed to healing and bringing about opportunity and experience and exposure of the situations in which our community needs to address, then we have to be willing to have the conversations. And sometimes, again, it's not always going to be comfortable or convenient, but they must be had.
That is perfectly summed up. It is what you told me in a private conversation. Part of it word for word, but it is really, really stuck with me. And it sort of created the framework of what we're attempting to do tonight, is have conversations. And you are outstanding. Youngstown and the whole valley is lucky to have someone with your depth. And I do appreciate you joining us. And in our next segment, we're going to talk, are Bryant or Tiana here? I don't know. But if they are,
Mark, sure. Before you boot me out, I just want to say, people, in our community should understand there's going to be many opportunities to engage in the conversation in our neighborhoods and our communities, and we need to make ourselves available to attend and participate in all of them. And don't assume any one format or venue is the sole answer. If we do that, we can actually start to have the conversation broaden and expand it. And so that means coming to Youngstown East Side. It means coming to Poland, Canfield, Sebring. It means coming to communities where we don't perceive there's racism, but we need to have a conversation. Undiscovered does not mean not existent.
And that was kind of the issue, was it not, in Canfield earlier this week? I've gotten a lot of questions about Canfield after we covered their community meeting. And, I think even having the discussion, I mean, we've gone from a situation in Canfield where people did, it was unspoken, maybe in Black American households spoken differently than white American households. I'm not sure, but be careful driving through Canfield. And now all of a sudden it's in digital, it's on websites. People can now look at those words. And I think sometimes just discussing an issue, rightly, wrongly, I don't know how it gets addressed and how much truth is in it. But all of a sudden, as much as I thought some of the parts of that discussion were a little awkward, I give Canfield credit for at least having the discussion and saying those words out loud. You can't fix something that you don't acknowledge. So if you want to hang out, I think Bryant Youngblood is going to be joining us now. Bryant, are you there? Well, we'll just keep talking until Brian gets here. But Brian is joining us next. We apparently had a malfunction. All right, well, we'll just keep talking. I think that's really one of the interesting, on the whole subject of empathy, one of the more interesting things that's happened in the past week. I mean, I really sort of found the June 23rd event, the Next Step Coalition from Clergy and Community Leaders event, was kind of interesting. But I see, when I saw the Canfield trying to do their own, I'm like, well, how is this going to work? And then, then I had lots of people who said that they thought that was a very effective conversation. And now it looks like I'm alone. So I hope there's people out there. That's the thing about live broadcasts and on any platform, you're always sort of at the mercy of the gremlins in the system. But they're telling me that Bryant is here and he'll be joining me shortly. So once again, if you have questions, there's a little button bottom of the screen if you're on Crowdcast, and you can push it and ask a question. So people are thanking us for doing this tonight. I saw that. And Cynthia Smith and Vicky are still here. So I'm going to keep on talking so Bryant joins us. Actually, this is a good time for me to tell you this is the first of 3 parts, thank you, Julianne, of the series that we're doing. And we're hoping in August will be our next discussion on the topic of race in the Valley. And we're hoping by that time to be able to have it partially live at a venue and then also streamed live on Cloudcast. So I'll give you more details at the end of tonight's broadcast. But we are under no, constructed by one meeting that we're going to get to it, but we really want to foster discussions. And I once again want to thank just a wonderful panel we have tonight. I mean, we have people who are willing to come in front of you and talk about some difficult issues, and that really speaks. Bryant says he's attempting to get in, so we'll take care of Bryant. But it really speaks about to the Valley and to how seriously people are having this conversation. Joanna asks a pretty good question, and I think I'm going to put this to the guests. But so often lately, I've wanted to speak out about my love for all communities, but instead I've kept quiet in fear of offending anyone. How can I express that love without saying the wrong thing? I think that's a really, really smart question, isn't it? I mean, we're all trying to figure out ways to. There's Bryant. Hey, Bryant.
Hey, how you doing? We had a little issue there. I was trying to get in. I don't know. It wouldn't let me.
They're like, it's like a thing where I'm stretch, Mark, stretch. Keep talking, Mark. So.
Yeah, there we go. I'm glad it worked. Glad to have you.
Thank you for joining us. Bryant, Assistant Director for Academy for Urban Scholars in Youngstown, and you were one of the moderators June 23rd of the Next Steps Coalition of Clergy and Community Leaders Forum, which was enlightening. I think that was one of the, so many, you get a lot of these forums and things, you kind of tune into them. That one was pretty interesting because I think a lot of people it wasn't so much the questions, were sharing their expressions. And I thought that was really kind of an enlightening part of, of the event. Yeah. I asked you to join us tonight for a very important reason. I want people to talk to people like me and people in the audience about what it's like to grow up Black in Youngstown. And you kind of did me a great favor by sending me some kind of an outline of some statements. And one of the things that I think I'd like to key on is what's normal to you is not normal to me. Explain that in a way that people sort of understand the meaning behind that.
I guess it really boils down to culture. A lot of our everyday norms they just aren't the same in two separate worlds. Even just conversation, simple statements, body language, just a lot of things that we see as common, things that we may say may come off as offensive or sometimes even intimidating in our conversations and our tone, when it's never really that case. So it just really takes time for people to understand that we are coming from two different backgrounds, from two different environments, but at the end of the day, we're still human, we're still people. So really taking that time to get to know each other and really understanding those norms and those cultural differences, I think will help both people out tremendously.
Yeah, so often Reverend Macklin was on and is discussing how we're often sort of in our own little silos and we're not really exposed to other people or other ideas. And I think that's where so much of this comes from. What sort of molded you growing up in Youngstown? What's an experience that had a profound effect on your life and experience?
Well, I'll say I was really blessed. I was blessed to come from a very strong family, a very strong family of women, I will say, to be honest. I didn't have really a lot of male figures in my family coming up.
You were a good football player, too.
Yeah, I was decent. I was all right. I was decent. But that's the good thing. That's what kind of carried me. That's what kind of molded me into the man that I am today. A lot of the coaches that I've experienced, I like to give a big shout out to like a Roland Smith, that really molded me into the man that I am. He's given me like even just the work ethic that he provided, the ability to fight through pain. You know what I mean? Deal with adversity and keep pushing. Those are just all things that have created who I am now. But the biggest thing that I like to kind of harp on is just, again, that idea of having a strong background, a strong family that's there to support the things that you're doing. But one thing also, the diversity that I experienced coming up is also what enabled me to become who I am, being diversified in the groups that I was around. So I wasn't just limited to my own environment. I had the ability through athletics a lot of the time to be exposed to a lot of different things. And exposure means everything. Exposure means everything to a person. The more that you're exposed to, the more that you'll understand. You know what I mean? And I think that's really what we're dealing with now, that lack of exposure. When you talk about different cultures or different people, different populations, they don't understand things because they've never been exposed to it. So that's one thing. I think that's what really helped me a lot of the time, just that exposure, just seeing things, whether it was me going to a military school and being in the deep southern part of the South, of Virginia, and seeing those things and interacting with those type of people and dealing with their beliefs. You know what I mean?
How did you survive that exactly?
I will tell you, I was there for a week and I was calling home saying, please come get me. I don't think I'm going to make it. But again, that came down to support. I had family, I had coaches calling me, just push through it, keep going. And it actually helped. It helped a lot. Again, it goes back to exposure. But, I was at a place where, the Confederacy was huge there. You know what I mean? Stonewall Jackson and General Lee. Those are all things those were statues outside of the arches when we walked out of the school that they would ask us to salute. You know what I mean? But they didn't recognize or celebrate Martin Luther King Day. So that was very tough to deal with and handle a lot of the times. And I was there at a time where President Obama was elected. So, just being right there and it punched you right in the face and you have to deal with it head on, it kind of prepares you for the times that we're dealing with now.
Have you had in the sort of the subject area of police and justice, have you had incidents, run-ins, experiences with police growing up in Youngstown?
I'll say, I think I've dealt with it my entire life. I mean, it's not just, I've had one particular incident that occurred, but that was just something that has happened to me and has become the norm. I mean, as bad as it is, it becomes normal for us. It's what goes on. I do think we're starting to make some headway, and moving forward with this thing, and we're actually opening up those lines of communication. So that's what I would like to kind of harp on. Like we're out here now trying to inflict a change so that people after me don't have to deal with the things that my people have dealt with before me. So that's where I like to keep my mind state when I'm talking and thinking about these things.
Yeah, I mean, a story that I often tell, I worked at the Vindicators at the main desk. In fact, the little phone number on the front page, if you have news, call, was actually my desk. Mm-hmm. And so we got a lot of random phone calls in the newsroom. But one of the phone calls I got one day that just kind of moved me a lot was a young man who had done all the right things. He got a job, saved his money, bought a car. It was a YSU student, and bought a late model Cadillac. And he was coming down the hill. And everyone who goes to YSU, I'm an adjunct professor there. You get those little things hang from your rearview mirror, the little
the air freshener.
Well, yeah, the air freshener law, but the parking tickets.
Oh yeah, I got you. Understood. Yeah.
And he was coming down the hill, and he got pulled over by a cop.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, I know the only reason they popped me was because I'm black and I was driving a Cadillac and I must be a drug dealer or some. And he was near tears and he was crying. And he was really, really upset. And I felt so terribly. There's nothing I can do. I was give me the badge number. We'll do a story. No, I don't want to get them on my back. But really, it's kind of drove home to me that whole issue of, I'm at the time was a white guy driving a PT Cruiser up the same hill every day. I keep my parking pass exactly in the same spot, and no one's going to pull over the white guy in the PT Cruiser with the thing in the window. And that really drove home to me, sort of the frustration of people who are doing the right thing and feel they're being victimized, no matter what.
Yeah, without a doubt. And it goes on, like you said. I mean, it's just the reality of it. And the first thing that we have to do is actually admit that there is a problem. We can't keep trying to sweep it under the rug and act like things are perfect. It's not. It's not blissful. It's not. You know what I mean? And again, I'll go back to the statement. People just have to take that time to understand the culture, understand what people have dealt with over this time. And you have to understand their frustrations when it comes down to it. And I think that's really what happens. I guess the thing that upsets me most, I would say, is just people not recognizing what's happened, what's going on, and why they're seeing the behaviors that they are. It's coming from somewhere much deeper than what the actions actually ever will show you. You know what I mean? Or even for some people, they can't even explain it. They can't explain to you why they're frustrated or why they're upset. But when you begin to educate yourself, you'll start to understand those patterns. And you'll start to understand the people. And when you understand the people, you can actually start inflicting some things and changing some things so that we don't have to continue going through it.
And it's empathy. I mean, as we were discussing with Reverend Macklin, how do you in your everyday life work at trying to create empathy so people are better understanding of the condition?
I just try my best to. I acknowledge and I see color. But I also see the depth of the person, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you can't just, it's like you can't, the common saying, you can't judge a book by its cover, right? I mean, you really can't, just because you look a certain way or you dress a certain way does not mean that defines who you are a lot of the time.
Right.
Because a lot of the people that people turn their nose up to or they look down upon or they fear, for me, those are a lot of people that raised me. You know what I mean? So if you can respect me as the man that I am, then you have to respect those people that inflicted in me a lot of the things that I carry around. With a high 10 and my chest held high. I mean, my chest poked out a little bit because I'm proud of who I am, and I was given those characteristics by some of the people that folks look down upon about their behaviors, about their dress and their attire.
We have to get through that. We have to get away from that. We have to figure out a way that we can have conversations that, get past that first wall of here's what you look like and then go into deeper because, I had one of my mentors had a great line. Everyone has a backstory. Everyone has a story. Everyone's got a backstory. Everyone's got that moment that creates who they are and why they're here. and what they're all about. And it's a matter of sometimes, and you teach it a little bit in journalism of getting to that point, find out who people are. And I think that's what we've got to figure that out. And I don't know what the answer is yet, but hopefully we can talk to some folks and make some, just having conversations, having 100. The show was viewed by 1,000 people. You got 1,000 people watching, someone who's, at least willing to put out there what's going on. I think that's an important thing. Yeah. Well, I need you to hang around. We're going to go into our next segment with our roundtable with Judge Baldwin, Sheriff Greene, and Mayor Brown. So, and I'm going to bring you back in, if you don't mind, Brian's a little bit later. I know you have some questions for the panel. So we're going to let the magic of broadcasting. Hello, Judge. How are you today?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Well, so far the technology's working.
Hey, Brian.
He'll come back.
Okay.
I'm getting notes on the side here like, Mark, you have to get to the next segment. Hello, Sheriff Greene. How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing fine. You look very comfortable outside once again.
Hopefully nobody cuts their grass. We'll be fine. I'll move inside.
I probably could have gone outside, so I didn't hear any grass cutting, but I was like, I kind of set this up downstairs. I'm going to stick to it. Well, thank you very much for joining us. I mean, the mayor will be joining us in a moment.
Hi, Your Honor.
Hello, Sheriff. How are you?
Good.
Good.
And there's the mayor. Everyone's here. What an esteemed panel.
Hey.
Hello.
Thank you all.
Good evening.
Really?
Yeah. You thought you had me.
Well, thank you all for joining us. It means a lot. I know the audience, we're getting wonderful comments from folks right now. And I think that's great. I thought we'd have a quick discussion. The three of you sort of, when we're discussing sort of, law and justice in the Valley, the three of you sort of intersect that at three very, very different points. You have the mayor connects with the community side of it. The sheriff connects from the, both policing and the jail side of it, and the judge obviously on the justice side of it. So in looking at that, what needs to be done? Just if you had to pick one thing that right now we could do differently about, creating a better sense among people that, that there's a serious, push to have, more equal justice. What would that look like?
Should I start?
Feel free.
Well, first of all, just like Lewis Macklin said, the conversation itself, having the conversation is really the first step. When I see Bryant making the comments about, where he grew up and his culture and how people behave, I understand that. And this is what I want to say in defense of law enforcement. I really feel in Mahoning County, and I can speak for the sheriff's office, but I know what the other chiefs have done, and they've actually done an excellent job in doing the right things, raising the bar, especially after Ferguson in 2015. There's so many additional positive things we've added to our training, our bias-free policing, our cultural sensitivity, our issues on use of force. And what's really frustrating to law enforcement is it takes one moron and knucklehead, whatever you want to call them, in Minneapolis. And I just feel frustrated from a law enforcement standpoint because it blows everything up, like a powder keg. And here we're sitting back in little Youngstown, Ohio, thinking, law enforcement wise, thinking we're doing, the right thing. We're doing all the right things, and we're out there and we're engaged in our community. I know Lewis real well. I know Pastor Simon real well, Reverend Harrison, Judge Baldwin, and the mayor. We've been at so many events together and talking about many of these issues, obviously. So, but from a law enforcement standpoint, obviously it's frustrating for us because we really believe the bad eggs are such a small percentage, and it's up to us in law enforcement especially to try and deal with those individuals, because I really believe that law enforcement is out there to save lives and protect the public and not to hurt anybody.
Judge, how do you look at it? What's something can be changed to improve at least the sense of equality and equal justice?
Well, I think first we have to have the conversations. We have to have the hard conversations with our staff. I do it on a regular basis now. My staff, we have monthly staff meetings. And actually, the first day back to work, 40 hours a week, was the Monday after the riots.
Yeah.
And so normally we have staff meeting on Thursday. And I said, I don't want anything to fester. I don't want any negative water cooler conversations to disrupt what we have established at Youngstown Municipal Court, which is the fact that we are an 8-hour family. So I have a duty not only to the public to make sure that everyone who comes through those doors is respected. I have a duty to those who I employ to make sure that they feel respected. So we had a staff meeting to say all of the growth that we displayed during the coronavirus, it was all hands on deck. However I can help, we were kinder to each other. We were kinder to the public because we were all going through the same reality. And then the riots hit. And I said, I will not allow that to disrupt what we have worked so hard to establish. And so we had to have some hard conversations. So I will make 2 points. First, I had to remind them that just because it is not your reality does not mean it is not real. And secondly, a lesson I learned at a racial justice training: you do not have the right to an opinion on someone else's experience.
Yeah.
And if we can keep that in mind, that is the only way we can display the justice that we are required to give the citizens of the Mahoning Valley and all who enter our doors. So it's those hard conversations, but greatness is not birthed out of comfort.
Boy, is that really wise. It really is true. I mean that, and hard conversations are tough.
Yes.
And when you get to be old like me, they don't get any easier. There's a lot of people who are out there who are kind of set in their ways, and those are the people that need to have those conversations, need to be challenged. And I think that's that's the struggle. And what also it shows too that how important it is to have an in-touch manager. I mean, people think of you as Judge Baldwin, but
right.
You're also the manager. You're the boss, and that's an important aspect of your duties every day too. So that's really good insight. Mayor, what are you seeing out there? What's something we could change if you had to pick one thing that you'd like to see changed right now to make a difference in terms of social justice and the perception of equality?
Mark, I think we need to make sure that when people tell you this is my perception, value it. It is, it's their reality in their life, and not dismiss it. You may say, well, that's your perception, but that may not be the reality. It is their reality. And I think the only way that we're going to do that is that we continue the conversations are great to have. And you say it's the tough questions, like peeling the onion back. The more you peel it back, the more you cry. But at the end of the day, you're going to get the job done. And I think it's going to take relationships. It's got to take that you have a group of individuals on here who have a relationship. But how do we take our area of influence and move those individuals into areas of influence or areas that's uncomfortable for them to learn from others? You ask, what can we do? I think sitting down with the Jerry Greene or a Judge Baldwin and asking, what do you really do day to day? Because people may have a different perception from wherever they come from, what a judge does or what the sheriff does or what the mayor does.
The mayor does
do on a daily basis. But it's all about us coming together, realizing that, for us in Youngstown Police Department, we really focus on building relationships. And I think if we don't have the relationships that we have right now with everyone in the city, no matter where you come from, I think we would be a different city. But I think because we have relationships, we're moving in a positive direction. And, we have community police that are out there. They're not just out there enforcement. They're out there being engaged, involved, and it helps with the intervention or making sure that, those in the neighborhood, they know their beat. They know the individuals who are out there. That gives us a big leg up on when things are going on. But it's the perception. Now, if we have a great officer in those neighborhoods, Now the children who are growing up in that neighborhood look to say, you know what, I want to be like that male or female that's in law enforcement.
Speaking of that, we asked our audience to send some questions in before tonight's broadcast. And one of them was, how does Sheriff Jerry Greene plan on attracting men and women of the Valley to become police officers? Does he think anyone will want to become cops? Have any of his deputies quit in recent months? So that was, but what are, if you had an outline in about 2 minutes, what your efforts have been to try to diversify, share that with us.
Well, to answer the last question, nobody that I have seen is quit or resigned because of any of the issues that are going on. I've heard stuff nationally, much larger agencies.
Sure.
I don't know if you ever watch commercials or at a YSU game or even at Tinseltown. We put up commercials everywhere over a year ago because we were having such a difficult time hiring people. The city of Youngstown had the exact same problems. A lot of that was money. That we're just unable in our area to pay a decent wage. A lot of YPD's officers, a lot of Mahoning County Sheriff's officers were basically being pillaged by the Summit County Sheriff's Office, the Akron Police Department, and wages that are $10, $15 an hour higher. We implemented in 2015 a recruitment program, a minority recruitment program based on the Ohio Collaborative. I don't know if you've seen in Youngstown, we focused mainly on the city of Youngstown, but in all of Mahoning County, we've had billboards up everywhere. We've gone to multiple job fairs, but I am I'm very nervous about who we're going to be able to pull, the pool that we're going to be able to look at to hire from now on, because I really do believe that it's a very controversial type of career to get into. So cautiously optimistic, but I'm scared of the results just simply because the last year has been really rough for us. And that had nothing really to do with these issues. It had to do with the economy. And we just didn't pay a lot, we didn't pay a lot to our officers starting out. And it's a very dangerous job. And, it takes a special person to be able to do that. So.
Yeah. And you a couple of years ago, you went from about $14 an hour to $17 an hour. Am I in the ballpark?
Yeah, our last contract that we just did, and that was part of the problem. Our officers were making $14.68 an hour. So one of the main things I wanted to focus on was to be able to attract individuals that wanted to come and then not leave, just get trained at our agency, which happened a lot, and then they'd ended up leaving. So we boosted the starting wage from, it was like $14.68 an hour to $17 an hour. And really the deputies that had about from 1 to 8 years on the job received decent raises. And that really, the past year has, I think, slowed down our turnover a little bit. So it's been effective. Our recruitment programs that we've done have, it's hard to judge, but it seems like We've had more applicants. We're a little bit different than Youngstown Police Department. They give a civil service test, then they do the backgrounds on all the candidates, interview all the candidates. We get them as they walk through the door. We do a very in-depth background, a psychological, drug test. We look into their past employment history, and then we'll panel interview 1 or 2 at a time. And if we think they're candidates, we put them on as we go. And for now, we're keeping our head right at, just above water.
That's good. Judge, a question that came in earlier, and it's going to test your comfort zone a little bit, but the question was, has Judge Baldwin experienced any racism in her life? And when I read that, I was like, well, that seems sort of like an obvious question. But what about treatment that you went through in the past has made you the person you are today? What's you have a lot of resolve. Where does that come from?
It's because you survive all the years of the treatment, and you know who you are as a person. And I was blessed to grow up in a house with 2 amazing parents who made sure I knew who I was. And so I knew when someone was speaking to me as if I was not who I was. And then when I was a child, it was very much stay in the child's place. So if there was a problem up until the age of 18, you tell mom and dad and you trust them to address it. And then past 18, I found my voice. and I address it myself. So I have lived the reality and continue to live it, because while I am the judge, I'm still a Black woman. And for most people, if I don't have on the road or I'm not in a familiar legal setting, I've been talked to and spoken to and dealt with in very interesting ways that were not respectful of me as a human being, let alone as an office holder. But regardless of that, regardless of how I am treated, I am determined and resolved to treat the people that I serve the way I want to be treated, and not in response to how I have been treated at times.
And it strikes me too that not only do you have experiences as an elected official, but even the mayor. I mean, we have our two really outstanding elected officials in our town. Judge Baldwin and Mayor Brown, and probably both still at some point facing some of that inherent racism that you stumble into throughout the valley.
Yeah.
Mayor, what have your experiences been roughly the same, and how do you handle it?
It has been pretty much the same. And like Carla said, as a young man, I was raised, by a wonderful mother who explained to me, here's how you act out in public. Here's your demeanor. But growing up, like I tell anyone, when I walk in a room, all you see is my Black skin and my smile. You have no idea what I do. You don't know what's in my pocket. You have no economy or scale for me. But I've been in rooms as mayor and with some of my staff who are white, and I'm standing there Black, and they say, hey, this is the mayor of Youngstown. And they don't look at me. They look at the white and, my staff who's with me. And I just, my staff and I, we just kind of laugh because it happens more than not. And we're in a great room. Like the judge said, if they're not familiar with you, if we're somewhere, we're in a mixed room, they don't look at me to be the mayor first. And that's a problem. And it should not be that way. They should kind of step back and wait to figure out which one of us is the mayor.
One of our readers submitted this question in advance, and it struck me, and I could only think of it as the judge and you were talking. I am Black and proud, but I get so depressed because my white friends don't seem to understand the struggle. Like it seems every time we go to a bar, the bartender takes my order last. If I say something, they're like, it's in your head. How can I help them see how that affects us? What a profound question. But what and thank you, reader, for reaching out, by the way. That was a very brave question to kind of throw into the atmosphere, and we're appreciative. But how do you answer a question like that?
Well, I would say,
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Judge.
I would say you have to have that real conversation, and probably best away from the bar, because if you had some spirits, it may affect the ability to receive the conversation with the spirit that it was intended. But I think whenever you go and say, when this happens, this is how it makes me feel. And again, you don't have a right to an opinion on my experience. If you're truly my friend, you never want to have to be with me in an environment where I'm uncomfortable and you're not even aware. Not that you can change anything necessarily in that moment that you're aware, this shouldn't happen. But you should be aware if we're friends. So it's those hard conversations. It's okay. I still love you. I've had the experience where I go to restaurants to meet my friends and I say, I'm meeting a group of people. And the waitress will tell me, oh, they're not here yet. Well, they're all over there, but they just don't look like me.
Right.
So it's a reality, but it requires a conversation.
And we keep circling around back to empathy at some point about having tough conversations. One of our readers, Mayor, on our Crowdcast has an interesting question. I'll let you handle that one. Where can a person go in the Wyatt area to learn more about racism from a Black person's perspective? Thanks.
I mean, you can start at anywhere. You want to start in the community. Reach out to the local clergy. There's civic and social organizations that are out there, both male and female. You can just about give them a call and tell them, you know what, I want to learn more about your community and your culture. If it's not the pastor, he can find someone in the congregation. If it's not the president of a civic or social organization, they can find someone who can match you up with that. I really want them to make sure that they're not just doing it to say that they did it. I want them to really, get engaged and exposed to someone. One of the things you have to realize, and Brian said it earlier, exposure is key to life. For me, being exposed to more than one culture and more than one background was great for me. So if the individual who's looking to get out and say, I want to learn more about the Black community, the Black experience, make sure they're exposed correctly. Don't just go and make it window dressing, or don't attend to a church service on Sunday and say, I had the Black experience. That's not the case. That may be a start, but that is not the case.
Not like earning a merit badge. You have to.
You're not don't check this off your bucket list and say I did it. If you really mean it, because you can get. I think that can go a long way, because that individual can go back to their household or their circle of influence and really give a good interpretation of how their experience went.
Well, I'm going to check with my staff. Bryant has questions, and I don't know. He has a question for the mayor. Julie, is it possible to swing Bryant back into the conversation? And they're telling me, Sheriff Greene, you're going to take a break for a moment. So we're going to put Bryant in your square. We'll come back to you. This is almost working like it's supposed to. I mean, I couldn't do
I know.
That's why they don't have. Last time they had me pushing buttons. I think this time it's like keep Mark away from the technology and see what happens. There's Bryant. How you doing, sir? Thanks for coming back. I know you had a question for the mayor, so I will let you go.
How you doing, Mayor Brown?
Good evening, sir. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well. So I got a couple questions from a few people, but one question was, what are the growing industries that are coming to the Valley, and how are we preparing our citizens and young people for those growing industries?
Yeah, Brian, that's a good question. Two things that we see more of now. It's in advanced manufacturing and technology. We used to have the steel mills. We're no longer going to be that. So we got to catch up with what's happening, with advanced manufacturing and the technology. One of the ways that we have to do it, we have to make sure there's a workforce that's ready, and we have to train them so that when that workforce is looking for a place to locate and to do business, they'll say that workforce is there. Whether it's Youngstown State or our community college, we need to make sure what their skill sets they're looking for. Business will tell you, here's what we're looking for if we want to relocate. How much of that skill set is there already, or how much of that workforce can you get ready? So that would be the piece that I'm looking forward to more than anything. We had a conversation earlier, and I wanted to find kind of a one-stop shop where we can marry the two. We can marry the employer and as well as the employee. Far too many times I hear individuals say, well, there's no jobs, or then I get the employer say there's no workers. And if I can get those two to come together, where you get the employer to say, here's what I'm looking for, and the employee to come in and say, you know what, I have that skill, and you can meet them for the one-stop shop. I'm not just looking for jobs. I'm trying to really figure out how to get them a career. And we would love to have a workforce development center where those individuals, is almost like when you go into the cell phone shop, where you go and get your phone. It looks real nice. You go in there, figure out what your assessments are, what your needs are, and then we can kind of merge those pieces together. So that's the direction I want to take this community, and I think that's the piece that we have to have if we're going to attract industries other than what we have here already.
I totally agree. I know that I just went down to the forum last weekend. They referenced the Mahoning Valley Manufacturers Coalition and the partnership that they've built with Eastern Gateway and with Nordson Manufacturing, I believe. So they're pretty much equipping individuals with the skills that are necessary, and they're pretty much guaranteeing them a job with Nordson. And I think those type of partnerships are the things that kind of have to go on and continue, because if we're educating people and training them and they're earning these credentials and these industry recognized credentials, and we're aligning those with what the employers actually want and what they need, then we're bringing them a quality, holistic employee. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I completely agree about marrying the two, the employers and the employees from the beginning. You know what I mean? And prepping them. And I think we just start prepping them even at the high school level. Not waiting until they're adults.
Yeah, and one of the things that I talk about is the mayor's attainment 2025, where the mayors get an opportunity to get involved in an educational pathway. The pathway for you and me may have been a lot different. When I graduated from high school, college, military. If you went to the trades, they talk about how that's where the kids who smoked and drank and they were looked at as a lesser of a student. That's where you go when you don't want to learn in school. However, right now, Brian, as I'm a homeowner, as I grow up, call an electrician, call a plumber to your house, call an HVAC individual to your house. Before they get to the door, it's $65 just to walk in the door. So we got to realize that there's other pathways that our children can actually attain. And we talked about how do we get them the right pathway? We just can't give them one pathway. We got to give them multiple pathways. So as a mayor, I've been discussing with the educators, the roundtable, bringing the unions, the military, but also how do we get them to believe that this might be the best way for me? And it might not just be the 18-year-old. It may be that 23, 24-year-old. I've had a couple years out of school, not sure what I want to do, but it's giving them a sense of, you know what? I see that they're building, buildings all over now. That might be a trade for me now. At 18, I might not have been mature enough to take on that. And so those are some of the pieces that we have to continue to push. So the mayor's attainment that I continue to work on, we just recently received a grant last year from Bill and Melinda Gates to help with this. But the COVID hit, so we kind of had to slow it down with the Youngstown City Schools. So we're working on that, trying to make sure that we expand our network. We can't be just here in the city of Youngstown. We've got to go outside and realize that there's best practice out there, and I want to make sure my kids and my children get it.
And isn't that the key in terms of the cycle of crime and justice? If people feel like they have a future and a job, that actually is the part that completes the circle, is it not? Judge?
Absolutely. Yes.
But they say that's the best social impact is a job.
It's huge, and we partnered before COVID. We partnered with the Ohio Employment Agency to come down to the court, one day a month to make it one-stop shopping. So you can check in with probation, see what jobs are available, and get hooked up all in-house. Because if we don't meet the needs of people, they will continue to cycle through the system. And we really wanted to make it, let this time be your last time. So let's also give you the tools so you can support yourself and become a whole tax-paying member of society who feels good about themselves and now has the skills where they can survive and get out of the system.
Sure.
Bryant, do you have another question for these two? Or
Yes. So
I told Bryant before the show that if I was doing my job, no one would hear from me. So
okay.
Yeah. So Judge Baldwin, just kind of piggybacking on some of the things that you just discussed. What are some of the programs or initiatives that you've initiated since you've held your seat as the presiding judge?
Well, since I took over as presiding judge, I do still preside over Veterans Treatment Court. That was started by Judge Milledge, and I kept that going once he retired and I won his seat. Then we started drug court in Youngstown Municipal Court, and we haven't had a drug court in over a decade. So that is up and running, and I'm proud to say that Youngstown Municipal Court was chosen as a learning site by Advancing Public Policy and Research. That is a organization, a nonprofit that is dedicated to looking at making sure we have effective pretrial processes so that people aren't in jail just because they can't afford bail. So we made application, and Youngstown Municipal Court is one of 6 sites chosen across the country. So we will be the learning site. So we will get technical assistance for the next 12 months. And I'm proud to be from the Valley, and I'm glad that this is my hometown. And I was thankful to the mayor when we reached out that he was in support of us pursuing this initiative. Sheriff Greene will be at the table, Chief Lees from Youngstown Police Department, Jennifer Roller from the Wayne Foundation,
Nice.
Dwayne Piccarilli from the Mental Health Board, and my magistrate, Judge DeSalvo. We'll have the court administrator. All hands will be on deck, and we will have to leave egos at the doorstep and say, what do we do to make sure that our system is just for all, regardless of color, regardless of socioeconomic status? So we are in the ranks of Miami-Dade County, Wake County, North Carolina. So this is huge. And I'm just excited to be the project champion for this endeavor. And I give great kudos to my staff, my chief PO, my pretrial services officer. They had to do the hard work of putting this together. And I'm excited to see what this will look like in the next 12 months and how we can bring justice for all through the court system at Youngstown Municipal Court.
Yeah, I really believe it's a great time to be from Youngstown.
Absolutely.
You're really starting to see a transition take place. You're seeing more and more people feel obligated to not only educate themselves, but also educate the people around them. And it's really motivating, for a younger person coming up to even see the people younger than me also taking their place in the rankings and making their voices heard. So again, it's a great time to be from Youngstown, I think. And then for the mayor, sometimes I hear people say that they're not quite clear on your plan for the city. So what's your vision for the city of Youngstown? And if you were to be reelected after completing your first term, what will be your plan over the next 5 to 6 years?
So, Brian, that's a good question. I think, one of the things I talk about we have not had is a strategic plan. And I think the plan has to be very, very focused on housing. It has to be focused on our assets, but it also has to be focused on our neighborhoods. And one of the things, we just had a vision and planning session with my staff. And tell me what you see in the next 5 years from your department. Tell me what you're looking for in the next 5 years in your neighborhoods that you're working on. We're going to work on the corridors. We're going to make sure that we continue to make sure the corridors look clean and pleasing. When I'm asking business to come into my city, the first impression is the best they have. I need to give it to them first. I need to make sure that they're connecting. Here's the other piece I want to make sure we're doing, that we need to make sure we're partnering with our neighboring communities. We're working on the Market Street, Mahoning Avenue, Belmont, and 422 with Camel, Struthers, and Austintown. So when we're asking for improvements and to make sure those roads look good and those corridors are consistent. So when you come from Boardman to Youngstown, they're the same. You don't see the difference. One of the things that was bothering me when I became mayor, you would come in from one side or one area, and you're like, oh, you can tell you're in Youngstown, or you can tell you're not in Youngstown anymore. I want it to be a seamless process. I think the one thing we're going to continue to focus on is making sure that the quality of life in the neighborhoods are one and the same. I think we got to make sure that what we're doing is consistent and putting it in writing. Looking at some of the things that are happening in the Youngstown, they're moving fast. As the judge mentioned, her program, we just were selected by the Bloomberg Harvard City Leadership Institute to be a part of 40 mayors across the nation to help us plan our way out of the COVID-19. We didn't even announce that yet. It was a competitive grant in the city of Youngstown. I just laid down, where I was as a mayor, starting my third year. Here's what I'm seeing. I talked about, building relationships that we didn't have, strengthening relationships that we already had, but also getting out off the island of we're big Youngstown. We don't need anyone else. And that could be further from the truth. And we also talked about how we wanted to take best practice from everywhere else, outside of Mahoning County, outside the state of Ohio, and look nationally to see what we could do here to get Youngstown moving forward. Brian, that workforce development piece that I talked about, that actually is a Belgium model. It's out of Belgium. And so that's international of how they're doing workforce development. So we're taking all those key components and eventually we'll put it in paper. We mapped it out. We talked about some of the new business that are going to be coming in, some potential business. One of the pieces that I want more than anything, I want our local investors to invest more back into our community. If you look around the community, if you look at where there's building and investment happening, those are some local investors. If we can get them to continue to invest, they'll attract national investors. But at the end of the day, Brian, what it's going to take, if someone wants to invest in your community, They want to see, what's your plan? What's your plan for housing? What's your plan for dealing with reduction in crime? What's your plan for making beautification? What's your plan? So when you have, at the end of the day, what's it look like? When I come off the field, Brian, either I'm gonna go to coaching or I'm gonna go on the fan and watch the emerging leaders, but I want to leave them a playbook. I want you to say, I'm on page 22, Brian, pick up and go until page 30, and then you can reevaluate your plan.
Understood. So when you talk a little bit about, workforce, go ahead. Am I interrupting?
Oh, no, I was interrupting. It's your
okay.
show. I was interrupting.
When you're talking about workforce, Mayor Brown, and those industries that are coming, like, what would be the first step for a group that was looking to put something like that together and begin those training processes? I mean, who would they go out to communicate with? Who should they be reaching out to get that process started?
Well, I tell you, start with our economic development department, because that's the key. I always say, if you can't figure out what department to start with the mayor's office, and I can be the one to guide you through that process. And here's one key piece I tell when I get a chance to talk to those businesses who are thinking about Youngstown. I give them my cell phone number, and I give it to them to tell them, if the deal's not going in the right direction, please call me before you walk away from it. I want to be the last refusal. I want to make the last pitch for you that you won't decide you won't do business in the city of Youngstown. I want to make sure it starts with me, it finishes with me as mayor. So if you start with economic development, but at the end of the day, if you can't figure out where to go to the mayor's office, and we'll point you in the right direction or walk you to the right direction. I don't like using the word point. I want to walk you through the process.
Good. I will say, with the just in reference, because I know Sheriff Greene, he got kicked out. He couldn't stay in with us here.
I'm going to bring him back in because I have a question from viewers too. What I thought I'd do is ask Julie if she could have retire the mayor briefly and bring Sheriff Greene back if he's with us. And I know you have some questions for him. And I've got one from a reader too that I want to get out there. One of the kind of the bigger stories in the past week has been the meeting in Canfield. And I know Bryant's got questions, and I want to get to one reader's question before we get too further. Jim wrote in a really long question that would take almost the rest of the show for me to summarize, but I thought I would at least get out there. One of the interesting things that happened in the past week was the Canfield kind of forum that they held out in the park in Canfield, and the police chief there said that as proof that they're not a racist police department, that 90% of the people they stop are white, so that therefore the math backs that up. However, we have been overrun by readers kind of coming back to us and saying, if 10% of the people you're pulling over are black and they're less than 0.2% of the population, that actually doesn't make up your case. What it essentially says is you're pulling over blacks at a ratio of 58% or 58-1 over white people. And so I guess my thought process was about the policing in some of the outlying communities. Reverend Macklin and I at the start of the show were discussing how, at least in Canfield, whatever you think about their forum, at least they got that myth about driving while black in Canfield is actually now committed to print and type. It's now out there. It's no longer kind of a secret. People are discussing it because we identified a problem, which is helpful. What would your advice to the chief in Canfield be if you had any right now? That's my question, and that's the reader's question.
What would my advice be to the chief of Canfield?
Right. Yeah.
Well, to focus on that issue. I mean, if the numbers aren't matching, then obviously they need to take a look at that. They have to have that open discussion with their officers. They are following, the rules of the Ohio Collaborative, which means they are keeping their statistics. And that's what those statistics are actually for. My office came back at 12.1%. And the individual that gave me those numbers was excited. Well, I wasn't excited at that because I thought, wait a minute, we patrol Canfield Township, Berlin Center, Ellsworth, but it actually gets a little bit bigger than that because we do what's called the speed grant. So we are constantly running radar in Youngstown, Glenwood, Boardman, Austintown, all over the place. It made me feel a heck of a lot better, about our numbers. But that is specifically what the Ohio Collaborative was made for. It will give a chief the ability to identify those statistics and be able to deal with it, with those individuals and those officers. I get pulled over in Canfield too, though, actually. and other townships on the strip of 224 for that matter. I think, something that people do need to think about when they're coming out of the city of Youngstown and going to these outer lying areas is that Youngstown is a very busy city. And many times they're shorthanded, obviously, as many agencies are, and they go from call to call to call. And they're not really actively doing patrol. And when you go into some of these other townships, these smaller villages, that's what they do all day. That's a big part of what they do. So sometimes when it seems like, I can't remember the last time I was pulled over in, Youngstown, except obviously for getting a ticket in the mail, Tito. But anyways, I think you really do, need to understand the different type of policing that there are in different areas. It's based on budgets. Smaller agencies, a lot of times, will only have one or two calls their entire shift. So they have a couple of complaints about speeders on this road or whatever. That's what they're going to do. They're going to pull people over. I have no doubt. I can't give my opinion on how you feel about that issue because I'm not in those shoes and I don't pretend to know. But I do know, I believe that, Chuck Colucci is committed to that community and that's what those stats are for, to be able to deal with those issues.
What do you think, Bryant?
I'll say, I think a lot of people sometimes get confused. I won't say confused. The chief and the actual officers. Sometimes those mindsets aren't always the same. Sometimes the feelings and beliefs of the chief don't always trickle down into the behaviors of the police officers. And a lot of times the chiefs, they take a lot of that heat behind it. But one thing I did want to ask, though, a lot of people are also unclear. Like, you have the sheriff's department and you have YPD. You also have State Highway Patrol. Sheriff Greene, could you kind of tell the differences between those entities there for people that may not understand?
Well, it really depends upon which county you live in, and over the years, the history of those different counties, who patrols what. But generally in your municipalities means that there's a mayor, and you're going to have a police chief that's generally appointed by the mayor. You're going to have a sheriff's office, which is responsible for covering the county jail. Okay, that's one of our biggest things that we do. All these other law enforcement agencies can't function properly without a fully open jail because there's nowhere to put individuals. We're also responsible for patrolling the unincorporated areas in Mahoning County. For example, it's Canfield Township, not the city, Canfield Township, Ellsworth, Berlin. We're responsible for conveyance of inmates to the penitentiaries. We do process service for all the courts. We support all the courts. We provide security for some courts. We have officers on DEA task force, ATF task force, violent crime task force, Marshals Fugitive task force. And I'll say this, this is talking about one of the things we did in 2015 about going to the body cameras. And I won't say just in law enforcement, we all know that there's that 10% of people that work in every field that they're just either, and it could be lower, it could be higher, they're just not a great employee or they don't treat people the way I want to be treated or you would want to be treated. And that was the biggest thing that I was excited about with going to the body camera for our officers, because it really raised the bar on how individuals were treated because you got Big Brother watching you. And it really turned out to be a positive experience with us over the past 5 years, simply because you have no idea how many false complaints we get against our officers' behavior. And really what it's done is it's probably 95, 98%. It's exonerated false complaints about our officer. It's also a great evidentiary tool. And I just think it's really improved how we do things. Now, obviously, it's like anything else that costs money. So depends upon how each agency wants to do it. I felt it was important to do after what I was seeing going on in 2014 and 2015, and it's been real beneficial for us. So.
Good. So I heard you mention a little bit about the collaborative advisory board that kind of, I guess, comes in and monitors everything that happens in these different departments. And, through the Next Step Coalition, we start looking into that. We've seen that your department is actually certified in all three of those areas. So what would be your... Yeah, that's definitely something to be applauded because it doesn't exist in any of the other departments around here. So, with that being said, what type of advice or what could you give them to assist in them actually achieving those, or what goes into actually making those things happen?
And I need your best 2-minute answer there, Sheriff.
Oh boy. Well, obviously, we're having this conversation and we're talking about other agencies, which I obviously can't speak for. So the advice I will give, and I have offered up, we have monthly police chief meetings, and I have offered up our playbook. I've had other chiefs call us, and it's Captain Steve McGarry, who we assigned specifically for the Ohio Collaborative and to improve all the different things that we're doing when it comes to all of these other issues. So, we just put together a new policy called duty to intervene, where if you're a police officer, you see somebody you're working with, even if it's a verbal escalation or use of force, it's a duty to that other officer, whether verbally or physically, to step in and stop that use of force if it's going too far or if it's even escalating. But and that's one of the things I do at this meeting. Hey, we just did this. We just did this new policy. It's been looked at by our insurance. It's been looked at, by Corsa. It's been approved by the state of Ohio. Anybody who wants this. The best thing is in law enforcement is you never reinvent the wheel. We always share policies. You just change the name and adapt it to your agency. And a lot of what we do here locally is done like that. We share policies, and I'm not embarrassed to ask anybody for their help either.
Right.
So, that's one of the things that, is basically to share this. We've already paved the way, and we're already certified in everything up to date. And furthermore, I want to say I really like DeWine's additional things that he's implemented for criminal justice reform. I love the fact of a police officer, if he has a use of force in his background, following him. One of my biggest pet peeves in this line of work is when it doesn't always have to be an abusive type officer, just a bad employee, for that example. And we've ended up terminating them. It seems like a lot of times they get picked up somewhere else, and I don't understand how that happens. So that's one of the things. The additional training is obvious, but it's like anything else. It costs money. I know body cameras are difficult to implement. They're not cheap. The software storage is a lot of money there too. So it's just working together locally with other agencies. And that's what my office has done from square one since I've been in. I want to help these other agencies just as much as I want them to help us if we need their assistance.
Understood. That's 2 minutes
Brian,
right there.
Do you have a question for the judge? Yeah. Do you have a question, Bryant, for the judge as we wrap things up?
I don't have a particular question, but I will say a lot of the things that I've seen her done here in the community have really helped. I know, like the expungement workshops that have went on, the things as far as, driver's license suspension and helping people get those things back in order. Those are things that we need here in the community. I mean, that's what's going to allow us to move forward. So I just want to congratulate her on the things that she's done since holding her position. And I just can't wait to see these things continue to happen.
And Judge, I'm going to give you the last word.
Oh, wow. Well, I want to say that I absolutely love my job. And I absolutely love being able to do it here in Youngstown. The Valley is a great place. During the campaign, I said the hardest part was the schedule. The best part was the people. And it's still the people. And the people are worth the effort that we all are making to make this Valley better. So as I tell my staff at every meeting, we are moving from good to great because the citizens of Youngstown and the Mahoning Valley deserve nothing less. So I have committed myself and my life to that of service. I am not a politician. I'm a public servant, and I'm grateful to serve. and we are moving forward, and we only want the best for the citizens of Youngstown. We'll have those hard conversations with the goal of moving us all forward. So kudos to Sheriff Greene and all that he's doing. And I'm thankful for the Sheriff's Department because we work together well. And it's to make sure justice happens. And to Chief Leeds, who's not on this call, he's been very responsible with all of our initiatives. To my colleague, Judge DeSalvo, we value the citizens of Youngstown, and it is our goal to make sure justice happens. So a lot of things that issue all happen before they come before the court. But when it gets to the court, it's our job to make sure justice happens.
Well, I can't thank all of you enough. I think we're all proud of the people we have serving. And I want to thank Rev Macklin, my buddy who helped start the program tonight, Mayor Brown, Judge Baldwin, Sheriff Greene, Bryant. What a fantastic job everyone did. And thank you for kind of disarming yourself a little bit and coming in here and not knowing exactly what it was gonna look like and how it would play out. And I do appreciate everybody joining us. Our next event will be in August, and we'll at a venue we're hoping to announce pretty soon. We're hoping it's a combination of both online for people who are more comfortable with that and in person, responsibly seated and social distanced. But we're going to take a look at the issue of race as a health issue in our valley, and I think I'm hoping that some of you will either tune in or join us for that one. It's the mission of Mahoning Matters to keep our community connected. We're in our 9th month. We're pretty excited. We're still young upstart news media, but again, we ask the people, if you like our program, if you like our website, mahoningmatters.com, if you would like to make a contribution, we survive on the contributions of our partners and our contributors, and you can get more information at mahoningmatters.com. We thank everyone for joining us. It's been an enlightening conversation. We could literally have gone all night. A lot of thought here, a lot of thoughtful people. We thank our panel. I think Mahoning Matters team that makes me look like I know somewhat what I'm doing. And we wish everyone a good night, and we hope everyone continues the conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Good night.
Have a good night, everybody.